What is going on, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? You are on the sidelines with the Sideline Guys for a very special MMA edition of the show. Once again, I am joined by my esteemed co host, the man who will find a way to make you wait outside for an hour and a half, but still loves you nonetheless. My guy, Sean Negron. How's it going, brother?
It's going well. It's going well. I think you kind of threw me under the bus there. I don't think people understand fully the story, but
Hey.
it's still, man. It was a hell of a card. Glad you came out, and it did not disappoint. That's for sure.
And speaking of things that don't disappoint, Sean, why don't you tell them where they could find you on the socials?
Ooh, all right. Never done this before, so you can find me at Sean Negron 26 on Twitter, and then bsreports.org, bsreports.org. You can go on my website and reach out to me there as well if you would like to get started in your sports career. And if you're looking for any sort of help whatsoever, I will always help and be there.
Yes, sir. Always available when his number is called. You can find me at Negron MMA on TikTok as well as the site formerly known as Twitter. And you could also find me on Instagram at Chris Negron underscore. But most importantly, make sure you're following the brand at OTS Media and OTS Media Co. on YouTube. But with all that being said, let's get right into it. Of course, the biggest piece of news over the week has been Jon Jones' removal from UFC 296. Unfortunately, he tore his
295.
pectoral muscle. Thank you. Thank you for that. I needed that. I need this voice in my ear, the voice of God, to correct all of my wrongdoings. Sorry about that, guys. So, 295, our main event, is no longer Yuri Prohachka versus Alex Pereira has moved up to the main event, while in the co-main we have, which I think is a little funny. We'll get to that in a second. But being replaced for the heavyweight interim title is one Sergey Pavlovich going up against Tommy Aspinall. Sean, I gotta ask you right off the top: are you more intrigued in this heavyweight matchup than the original matchup we had slated?
Yes, for sure.
Wow.
Because I believe, and I'm glad that we're here talking about this now because I believe that this is it has the word interim around it, right? But I believe that this is more of a title fight to me. I think this is something where this is only going to be interim until Jon Jones ends up fighting Stipe, and then when they both do their little double retirement, um, I feel that as if both will retire together, and then Jones or Stipe, whoever wins, will drop the belt, and then whoever wins the interim in 2 weeks from now will just take over as champion. That's how I think the UFC is going to try to do it now. Um, it's a little tough because of the fact that Jones is probably not going to fight for at least 8 to 10 months at the very minimum, and it's tough to see those two guys with Aspinall and Pavlovich have to wait another 8 months, 8 9 months, maybe even 10 months in order to just become a heavyweight champion or undisputed or fight again. So that this is a very tough time. Obviously, they did not expect this to happen, but yes, I love this fight. This is to me the current heavyweight championship fight because it seems very clear that Jon Jones is going to retire. I would be or Stipe. Stipe seems more of a sure thing. Um, I would love to see if something changes with Jon Jones now that he's getting surgery. Maybe he wants to continue, but I think even with this injury, it even helps him confirm it even more that he's good here. He's going to do one more for the legacy fight for the biggest payday probably of his career. Call it so he doesn't continue to get injured and wrap it up. And then I think, like I said, whoever wins this fight in 2 weeks will then become the undisputed champion.
Hey, it sounds like we're running parallel divisions here, which I fucking hate. I kind of thought it was stupid as hell that knowing he was going to be retiring right after you give him the Stipe fight, like if it kind of feels like, well, then force him to fight the person you think is still going to be here, right? Like as a promoter, that seems like a nightmare. Obviously, Jon Jones is an exception as always to every rule, and probably the best shot to have an actual draw that they have. So makes sense why they did it, but obviously it sucks. I agree to a certain extent. I kind of wanted to get this fight over with to a certain extent. It felt like both teams felt the same way, right? Like they're like, as soon as this one's done, we're done. Like this is like Dana White always says, this is a going out of business sale. So as far as future intrigue, obviously this matchup is much better. I think name value wise, this card definitely took a hit with this now co-main event. And obviously that's not the biggest best of scenarios considering obviously they want to make these New York cards feel absolutely as big as possible. Two title fights still is a very great card. Don't get me wrong, but especially after losing Jon Jones, it feels like this card lost some of the momentum. Considering even if you got the pre-sale ticket codes, like you were being asked to pay $900 plus if you wanted to sit in the nosebleeds. So considering all of those things, I wonder if they try to rush and throw something else on this card too. We saw that they were nimble with the last Abu Dhabi one. Who knows at this rate? But I think it's a good consolation prize. I agree. I think this is a main event worthy fight, and I think the short notice nature of it also adds a little bit wrinkle to the matchup. Like I think that definitely favors Pavlovich, if you ask me, being able to sort of come off the couch, and you're going to be expected to do sort of the same thing no matter what, right? But I feel like for Tommy Aspinall, he's probably going to be trying to build a wrestling centric game plan against someone like Pavlovich. So to have more time to do that is always beneficial. Who would you pick in this co-main event scenario? I know I'm jumping the gun here. We got a lot of cards till we get there, but just gut instinct, who you got in that co-main event for the interim strap?
Well, we're really only one card away till we get there, but um, to be honest with you, I kind of I'm picking Pavlovich to answer your question. But that's because also Pavlovich is the backup fighter for Stipe John Jones before this injury, so he's been training, and he's probably been training for a wrestler like John Jones. He's been probably ready to go 5 rounds. I think this is. I don't think he's ever been to the fifth round or fourth round before. I think he's had a 5 round fight once or twice. I think he's had a couple main events, but he's been training. It's Aspinall kind of got this on the short notice after his win. I can't remember. I think it was like 2 months ago when he last won. There were talks about him versus Pavlovich. For the number one contender fight. And Pavlovich didn't want it, and they just couldn't make it work. Cyril Gahn, same thing, and now they kind of like they probably called Aspinall last second, and they said Aspinall, Pavlovich has been the backup fighter. He's ready to take over. Would you want to do this? And I think the UFC probably discussed like, oh, you know what we could do Pavlovich versus Stipe, but do you really want to do that? Because I would think Pavlovich would win that fight, to be honest with you. And I think then that would make the Stipe John Jones fight look that much weaker. And then they don't want to do that. They want to have a legacy fight here. They want to build that card up between two legends. It it sucks. This to be honest, completely honest with you, there's nothing like the only great thing about this is that we're gonna get a killer of a fight between Pavlovich and Aspinall. Those are two killers, and I don't think people who are the casuals who are just understanding who these two guys are, like they don't understand how good these two guys are, and to have these two fighting as a co-main is a blessing. Granted, it's not John Jones, I understand it, and not Stipe, but these guys can be legacy names 5, 10 years down the line with how good they are at this current moment. Aspinall, I think, is destined for greatness. He's a heavyweight who can do it all. Pavlovich is just a mean monster, just so goddamn big. If he punches you one time, it's kind of Nagano type strength. He'll put your lights out. So this is going to be a fantastic fight. I just think that obviously, we're kind of in the situation we were at UFC 294, in which we'll get to, in the fact that you got another short notice fighter coming in trying to do the impossible, and I think that's more of Aspinall. Obviously Pavlovich wasn't destined to fight, but he's been training to fight. He was the backup guy. So he's been training, he's been ready to, cut weight, make the weight, and, be there and whatever. Aspinall getting this call literally off the couch. This is tough, and especially not, it's not a 3 rounder. This is 5 rounds. This is for an interim belt that most likely will become the real belt. So this is tough. So if anything, I have to give my thoughts and probably my money if I were to bet it on Pavlovich here. But if this was a full camp from both of them, it would be, I think, a little harder to choose.
Love the way you broke that down, man. I'm gonna keep it short. I'm going with Aspinall on this one just because the way the styles match up. But I could certainly see, man, both of these guys are super dangerous, and I won't be surprised if either of them get to finish early. And obviously, if you hear someone got to finish early, you tend to think it might have gone Pavlovich's way, considering the way both these guys fight. But I think it's gonna be wild. I think it's gonna be a crazy Beyblades type fight, right? Where they just keep on connecting until one of them go down. I won't be surprised to see a real heavyweight barn burner in that co-main event. But we'll get to more breakdowns for 295 when the time comes. For now, it's time we recap a big pay-per-view that just passed, UFC 294. Out there in the desert, I think that's where we were, if you remember correctly. Um,
Definitely.
can't put my
Pretty sure.
finger on exactly where,
Yeah.
but somewhere in the United Arab Emirates,
You're
there
not
was a
wrong.
card. There was a card. There was an event, and it was an unfortunate one. But for a lot of different reasons, we'll start at the main event. Obviously, our heartbreak of the day. The reason why I picked Islam Makhachev with no hesitation with my number one pick when it came my way. This was sad for me, bro. This was very
Me
devastating.
too.
And I think you and I had the same sort of reaction. I remember you looking over at me, just kind of like, fuck, man.
Yeah.
And I couldn't agree more. I wanted nothing more than for this fight to be entertaining, for this fight to be a close fight. Um, Obviously, Islam made a lot of great adjustments with this second fight, particularly in the clinch, tying up beautifully and using that plum to land knees up that center channel as often as possible, and it really forced Volkanovski into a situation where he felt really pressured. Right, um, just a beautiful game plan, right, to go against those a shorter opponent and finish with those kind of kicks. Caught him at the end of a very nasty high kick and finished him off subsequently from there. Um, Obviously, it was a shocking result, no matter how you slice it, but how do you come away feeling about Islam Makhachev after just another dominant showing as champion?
Well, it shows that he is a lot scarier than people think, and people like to, as much as people try to deny that he's not in Khabib's shadow, I think he is very much in Khabib's shadow, and I think he can, obviously, he doesn't deserve to be because he is a decorated and he is a champ. I think he's one win away from tying Khabib in title defenses, if I'm not mistaken. Um, he is a great champion. The thing is that he showed it and solidified it against Volkanovski, and this is what it gets you thinking as a Volkanovski fan, as a fan in general. I'm an Islam fan as well. I'm just thinking in the fans of Volkanovski, or like a Kamaru Usman sort of situation where when you see knockouts like this, and you see it end like that, that's never happened to someone like Volk. Do you think it's because of the 11 days or the 10 days notice, or do you just think, I know people say, well, it happened in the first round, so obviously it had nothing to do with the short notice. And I don't think it had to do with the short notice cardio wise, and being able to take this fight. But I do think film has definitely plays a part, and adjusting to certain aspects from the first fight definitely do take a part. But at the same time, I'm not making any excuses for why Islam didn't win. Islam definitely was the better fighter. He made Volk for the first time not fight Volkanovski's fight. Well, actually maybe the second time, but you know, this was Islam's fight from the very start, and it was not. Once it was not like back and forth for as long as it lasted. What 2, 2, 3 minutes? It just seemed like Islam was just prey. Like he was just going after him, and it was like almost inevitable. And I remember, like I said to you right before the fight started, like, come on, like I need Islam. I mean, I need Volk here. Come on, man. This is huge. I hope Volk can take this. And then it just felt like after the first minute, I was like looking at you and all my friends, like, I don't know, man. This doesn't look good. He doesn't look like himself here. It doesn't, he just seems so uncomfortable. And then obviously it ends the way it does, and it's really rough seeing Volk get knocked out like that. Even whatever stumbled, to the point of knocked out. It's I never thought I'd see that from him, and kind of kills his 155 dreams, but he's still a Hall of Fame champion, still currently at 145. So
I think it's easy to be a little somber considering the way it all played out. But in real time, I really didn't feel like he looked off or he looked like he was in a bad way. Really, I thought he looked aggressive. I thought he looked ready to go when that bell rang. It just felt to me like the adjustments that Islam made, right? You got to give credit both ways, right? Both, of course, Islam was preparing for a fight, but he accepted the fight against Volkanovski on short notice, same way Volkanovski did. And although Volkanovski clearly wasn't in the best shape as possible and definitely didn't have a camp under his belt, I think if you sign up, you got to be ready for whatever happens from that point on, right? And I thought he looked ready to go. I thought, especially in those tie-ups, when he was able to put Islam against the fence, he was trying to punch his head through it, right? Like he was aggressive, and it was very clear that he saw some things that he wanted to capitalize on too. Man, I just thought amazing game plan from Volkanovski to get him. I mean, excuse me, from Makachev to get him to keep dipping his head to feel that need to sort of go against that resistance, right? Whenever someone's pulling on your head, no matter what the exchange is, if you're against the fence or not, your instant reaction is to straighten yourself up, right? No matter what, if someone's putting that force on you, um, your first instinct is to get away from it. And from that point, you saw his game plan to sort of keep him upright, landing some body kicks early on, and then once that kick landed, man, it was just night night. Hell of a performance, hell of a knockout, man. And obviously, this is like you said, he's always in Khabib's shadow. It's always hard for him, particularly because no matter what, he's always going to be compared to Khabib. Um, but I don't think we've ever seen a champion like him at 155, where the threat of what he's able to do on both sides of the ball is a lot more dangerous, in my opinion, than to what someone like Khabib had. Now, obviously, it's hard to make that case because he left unblemished, right? He left the sport unmarked, and who would have known what would have happened in other matchups of what we might have been able to see come out of his game as well. But it's hard to think of another champ at 155 that has this level of threat in both phases of the game, and clearly, it's going to be a motherfucker for whoever is matched up for him in the future. Is there anyone that comes to mind that you would want to see fight Makachev before the end of the year where you're like, man, this guy has a real shot? Because honestly, it's real hard for me to think of somebody.
as of like what's his next fight?
Well, not necessarily what his next fight should be. I think based off of everything we know, it should probably be Charles Oliveira in that rematch scenario. But if there's someone you could send in there, right, to save your hamster's life, who would it be? Because it's hard for me to come up with an answer to that question.
Yeah, honestly, I would probably end up if I had to keep it on a 155 basis, I probably would send Oliveira. He probably has the best shot to do both, to be good at both or multiple styles of MMA. And if you look at anyone in the top 5, just don't see a way anyone gets past Islam. Even Oliveira, I don't really give it to him. Like you were saying before, we haven't really seen anyone like Islam in that respect. And I was gonna say Oliveira's probably right there. if we're talking before the fight, Oliveira was being compared to Khabib at the time, and now Islam has probably surpassed him. The fact that he beat him, and he has another two title defenses against the featherweight champion. So I understand that. So I think that one would be a little closer, but with Gaethje, I just don't think so. I think it's the same thing. If you get him to the ground, it's a bad night. Same thing with Dustin Poirier. Michael Chandler might be a little bit different because the fact that he should be a wrestler, he's just so dumb with his fighting, IQ. I don't know. He just wants to be like a crowd pleaser instead of being the all American wrestler that he is. And and the DC saying Connor should be the next fight. I think that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Like, I really just don't. No, Fazeev, Gamrot, no. So yeah, Oliveira probably be my first choice, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's a great shout. I disagree with the Khabib comparison or him being in that same ilk of those two guys, just because we've never really seen anyone vulnerable the way we've seen Charles Oliveira look vulnerable in a couple of even his title fights. For Islam and Khabib, none of those guys have ever been in that realm.
Mm,
Um, but also,
I think
what
Islam
what was
looked
that?
vulnerable in the fourth and fifth, or I should say the fifth round of the first Volkanovski fight.
In the fifth round for sure, but you could argue he won that fight 4-1.
Sure,
So it's like, yeah.
but if you can also argue if there was just one more round, if there was just 30 more seconds, if there was just 10 more seconds, who knows what Volk could have done. So, it I think that showed for the first time that Islam wasn't human, which is why they made this whole rematch. I think based off of those 5 minutes alone, they said,
And it's hard to come off of that second fight feeling like, man, yeah, that's true vulnerability there,
sure,
right? I think it's a lot of back and forth, but I agree. I think if there's anyone I'm sending out there, it's most likely going to be Charles Oliveira. Obviously, sucks that he had that big cut, and I can't wait to see him come back again.
because you
But
never
man,
know.
there's a real big difference, in my opinion, though, as
Yeah,
far as setting yourself apart from the pack in these fights. And don't get me wrong, I love me some Charles Oliveira. I love this title reign. Some of the most best action fights you could have, and to have that as a champion is remarkable. But in my opinion, Islam is on his way to doing something real special here, and I think if he can continue on the path that he's on, I won't be surprised if he ends up in the conversation with Jon Jones when his career is over, as far as being one of the best we've ever seen. And I think a big part of that is afforded by his ability to continue in the sport, right? Shout out to Khabib and everything he's doing with his new team as well. A lot of those guys coming out on top big time in a lot of these fights as well. And just continuing the legacy of Abdul Manap. I don't know if you saw that video, excuse me, most recently by Will. Believe his name is Will Harris. I don't want to mess that up, but he's the guy that has always been with Khabib and in his camp, recording a lot of sort of back behind the scenes footage. And recently, he dropped a long clip of him coaching the guys and just digging in. I think it was on a PFL fighter. I'm trying to remember his name. Habulayev is his last name. I'm trying to remember his first name.
mm,
But he was talking about how basically no matter what you agreed to come to this camp, like our time as far as what we're doing here, we're not running on your time. Like, just because you don't have, like he was saying, just because you don't have a fight right now, or you're not fighting it within these 2 weeks, doesn't mean that you don't come to train when the rest of your teammates do. And like, clearly he's just very serious and regimented, in a really disciplined way that you don't see, in my opinion, throughout all the different other celebrity camps, so to speak. So I think there's going to be a big legacy for that team moving forward in the sport of MMA and the way that they've changed it. But specifically with Islam, man, I could really see him running off a long title reign. But who knows? The sport is goddamn crazy. So
exactly.
I think it's only safe to say the only thing we know is that we don't fucking know shit. So can't wait to see him defend the belt, and that goes for both of these guys. I'm sure is Alexander Volkanovski will be back as well. So all that being said, anything else you got on the main event?
No, that's basically it. The only thing I would say with the Islam thing is that if he beats Oliveira for a second time and then has two wins over Oliveira and Volk, I don't care if it's Gaethje or Poirier, whoever comes next, because we've talked about this before, where the lightweight division's a little slim after the top five. It's there's a couple other guys, but I think the lightweight division's a little bit on the slower end right now on building. These top prospects coming in. So I think Islam could have a humongous title reign. I think he's got maybe two more fights left of Oliveira, and maybe a Gaethje and a Poirier, and then he can eliminate that whole regime of the older fighters, and then watch these prospects come up and just annihilate them. Because I think Islam is here for a while. To be honest with you, I really do. But yeah, that's really it. The lightweight division's in some serious trouble when it comes to trying to get a new belt on a new person.
Yeah, man, and I won't be surprised if we end up seeing him. He's already been talking about it. Make his way up to welterweight too. Who knows? Maybe he finishes his career up there. That'll
If
be
Covington
another
wins,
crazy
I
thing
think
to
they do it.
behold. I think either way you could do it, to be honest, but
You could
I think they're
sell
kind of
it.
sick of it as
You
well.
could sell it like crazy. If Covington wins,
Hey, I don't want good things for Colby. All right, I
nobody
don't want
does,
anything.
bro. But I'm just saying, you can have Covington, this American of all that nonsense, and then someone like Islam to come in, two wrestlers, and oh, that would be a hell of a fight. But we'll get there when we get there.
What would you lay the odds for Colby to walk out to that fight with the Ukrainian flag? What would be the odds on that?
I would say 2-1 there for sure. It has to be. He's gonna do something where it's American on one side, Ukrainian on the other, or something wild. He's a crazy, crazy person.
Who knows? Hopefully, flags are unbanned again. But who knows? Maybe we're the soft ones, if I remembered correctly, with that fucking rant. But we'll move on to the co-main event: Hamzat Chimaev versus Kamaru Usman. Before we get into the particulars of this one, I gotta ask you, how did you score this one?
I scored it, if I remember correctly, 2-1 Hamzat. I thought it was really close. I think the first round
Mm,
was clearly a 10-8, and I understood completely why. I think one judge had it 28-28, if I remember correctly. So
mhm.
I understood that, but I did believe Hamzat had done enough. But it's exactly what I said in, when we talked about this fight on the preview, where I felt that Hamza was a little bit exposed in the gas tank area against Gilbert Burns. And I felt that definitely came to fruition again against Kamaro. I felt around early second round, mid second round, he started to slow down a lot. He could play it as the gas tank. It did come out later. I think that Hamzat said that he thinks he broke his hand, and maybe that was the whole reason that things changed and he changed his whole style up. But that first round was so incredibly dominant. It really showed, the new regime taking over the old regime, and it was almost tough to watch as a Kamaru fan. Like, I'm a fan of both, but you watching Kamaru, be this legendary decorated champion for the longest time. You have Dana White saying he's the greatest welterweight of all time. That's a little debatable, but like
A little.
you see Kamaru come up, he's doing the short nose fight, and then Hamza just obliterates him in the first round, and then obviously things slowed down. So obviously, if this was a 5-round fight, we may be having a uh, completely different conversation. So overall, though, I did score 2-1 for Shemaev, but I think if it went to a fourth round, things could have been a lot different.
I agree, man. I think 2-1 Chimaev is the scorecard. I think there's a case for 3-0. To be honest, I know that sounds crazy because everyone's like, the best round anyone had was round two. Yeah, but was it? Was it really? I think the third round by Kamaro was the most dominant round as far as the current criteria. But obviously, I mean that's hard to say considering round one and the grappling dominance. But I mean asserting yourself and like that feeling of danger. I think they're a little bit more equal than the unanimous 10-8 in round one would tell you, right? So shout out to Kamaru. I felt after that fight, to be honest, I had a little bit more faith in Kamaru coming out of it than going in. and his prospects going forward as well. I think he fits right back in no matter what division he decides to go back into after this. So I won't be surprised to see him in a number one contender fight sometime soon again, just because he's that kind of a fighter. And clearly, his gas tank is what sets him apart. Because could have argued on short notice he was the better guy for wear come the third round. So love me some Kamaru Usman, and I'm sure he'll be back, and that won't be the last we see of him. But
Yeah.
we move
Well, hold on.
on.
I got a quick question for you. Um, you know, keeping this quick, I wanted to ask you now. We know what this fight was a setup for. Obviously, for a number one contender fight. This is Hamzat won. He's now the number one contender versus Sean Strickland. Um, I wanted to ask you. Well, it also came out on Tuesday that he's now ranked number nine. Hamzat is at middleweight. Thought that I'll ask you, what do you think of that number? But also, do you think that Hamzat deserves to be the number one contender before and after this fight? And how do you see that playing out quickly?
I think if we're talking about deserve, it's a different conversation. I think the rankings are fucking stupid. And before this fight, it was declared what this fight was for. So no matter what, in my opinion, if you're going to be getting the shot, you're the number one contender, right? Like that's how that works. If you ask me, if I'm the rankings guy, but clearly they don't call my phone for a reason. They must have it all figured out. Nine sounds very weird to me. The fact that you want to have someone getting a title shot being ranked number nine, super strange. But I don't mind it considering obviously that was a big part of this fight. I mean, they mentioned it 1,006 times on the broadcast leading in and then during the fight that this was the number one contender fight, right? So uh, yeah, being ranked at nine is stupid when you're the number one contender, but I think it's justified. I think if you ask me, I would rather, and this is after the fight, right? What is it? The opposite of hindsight is 2020. But after the fight, I feel like, man, where Drickus at? Like, give him the shot. If anything, that is a more middleweight title deserving win, if you ask me, than that. But we already knew the stakes going in. It is what it is, and hopefully, I'm pretty sure with the way they handled the Drickus situation, um, if Hamzat is injured, he won't be the number one contender anyway. So we've got things to figure out here in middleweight. But gun to your head, Sean Strickland, Hamzat Chimaev, who you picking?
Jesus. Oh, Sean Strickland.
Really?
just to throw some wavelengths my way, have some people go crazy and hate me. But
Is it in the Sean name?
yeah,
Is that
yeah, that's
why? Is it
that's definitely
The
that's
Sean
definitely not it.
lineage?
But it's because it's you know, it really depends. I think if Hamza gets his way in the first round, like he's done with so many other opponents, then no, obviously I don't think that. But I also think I have yet to see Hamzat in a five rounder, and I think Sean has the gas tank to do it. And I think if Sean can get the fight to the middle of the second round, even the third round, I think that's where you start to see the tides turn and turn into Sean's fight, especially with all that pressure constantly, like we just saw with Adesanya. You know, making him uncomfortable and kind of seeing the gas tank run out quicker. So I don't know. Who the hell knows? But if we saw like we saw with Hamzat in that first round, just absolutely, toy with Kamaro, I don't think Sean Strickland's making it out like Kamaro did. I think Hamzat would submit Sean Strickland in that first round. So it really depends. Those first 5 minutes are gonna determine the whole fight to me, but we'll see when we get there.
Whew, you got some balls, man. I'm not willing to go down the same route. I'll be picking Hamza in that one, but I agree. I think there's a lot of avenues for victory for Sean in that fight. Obviously,
I like to be
endurance is
different,
the
right?
fucking key. Endurance is the key. But if you ask me, the next thing I need to see from Hamzat, just don't even fucking look back, right? Watch nothing but Khabib tapes in analyzing and trying to work on your game for upcoming fights. Just fuck going for submissions, bro. Especially in the first round. Just smash everybody. That's
Smash.
what you came here to do. And clearly, his control in round one is just a different level. Nobody does that to Kamaru. Same way we said nobody does those things to Volkanovski. So obviously, just surprising performances and dominant ones for both of these guys. But I think Hamzat should be able to win that fight, all things considered. But the longer it goes, the more nervous I get, especially with that matchup with Sean Strickland. But we'll move on to the weirdest fight of the night. Magomed Ankalaev versus Johnny Walker. Just a comedy of errors, as always, whenever it's Magomed Ankalaev. Can we believe this is now his second prominent no contest fight where he's probably going to end up in a rematch? The first being the crazy early stoppage against Yanku Dalaba. We saw how that one ended in the rematch. Honestly, I'm intrigued for the rematch because if you ask me, I wasn't feeling bad with my pick watching that fight before that wayward knee. Um, I thought Johnny Walker was in that fight, and I thought honestly, if we're talking honesty here, I think before the ref even intervened and he took that knee, he didn't really look affected, right? I think it was until after they broke up the fight and it was clear that this was an illegal knee, that he started to look a little bit worse for wear, right? You sort of come out of character a little bit. I'm sure the fucking knee hurt him, don't get me wrong, but it was something that in the moment he was able to soldier through. So if it wasn't stopped, he would have been fine. So that's why I think once again the doctor stoppage is just fucking egregious. On top of the fact that he just showed up, asked him where he was, and then got the answer of "We are in the desert, baby." And who the fuck knows, right? Could have been memes at that point. Like that could have been just him being him, right? And just having his answer. Um, Shit, if you asked me what state I'm in and I'm traveling, I might not be able to give you that answer as fast as as humanly possible, let alone after taking an illegal knee to the head. So I thought that doctor did a terrible job all fucking night. But I think a lot of this falls on the refs too, man. I get that this was an illegal knee, but to call it unintentional, in my opinion, is bullshit. Like I get over and over again, right? Fouls. We clearly there is not a movement to be hard on fouls in any sort of way. In every fight, you're sort of allowed one of each, right? One of each, and it's just assumed that you're not doing things out of malintent. I would love a world, right, where your warning's in the fucking back. Don't and from now on, if there is something that is warning worthy, you are getting a point taken away. Because in my opinion, especially because I picked Johnny Walker in that fight, doesn't make sense that it is rushed to be stopped and then considered a no contest because it's deemed to not be intentional. There's nothing more intentional than kneeing a motherfucker in the head. So either make the knees legal or we need to figure something out here because clearly there's no efficient way to tell a fighter when not to throw the knee, and then there's no real consequence for throwing illegal knees. So what are we doing here? You're gonna land the shot, and then from that point on, if they decide that they're able to continue, we're gonna move on as if nothing happened. No, dude, that's a significant fucking moment in the fight, and we'll get to that later on in the card too. But I'm fucking riled up, as you can see. Are you as upset as I am, Sean? Because this was some bullshit.
Yeah, I think the no contest was bullshit. I felt bad for Johnny Walker too because it was a close fight, and as quickly as it came and went. Um, I think what bothers me the most is how everything played out and how it ended the fight and the doctor and the language barrier and yeah, even the ref was like, "Oh, he's good to continue. No, he's not good to continue. Oh, he's not good to continue. Oh, no, he's not." And then he's like, he's calling the fight, and you can even tell he's not happy about it. It's there's still 2.5 more minutes of the timeout that's left of the 5 minutes. Like give the guy all the time he needs, and like that doctor was
Mhm.
very questionable from the start, especially from the other no contest that happened, which we'll get to. That was a very debatable situation. It was very ugly all night. I think there was a lot
Mhm.
of timeouts. Let's say there were a lot of dirty type fighting on accidentally, of course. But it was a lot of doctors, coming in, a lot of timeouts, a lot of breaks. It was a very off card from the usual. So It does suck. I was kinda hoping that they would surprise us or something and they would throw this fight on for 295, to kinda throw them right back in, but, I don't know what Johnny Walker's situation is from that knee. I don't know how bad the cut is. I don't know if they're both willing to fight again a month from now or really, like, 3 weeks from they last fought, but I hope that they do run this back within, 296, 297. I think 296 is basically wrapped up with how stacked it is. So I hope that they throw this on the January card with Volk. So I want to see this fight, hopefully again soon.
Great shouts. Yeah, I can't wait. You would assume that they're able to get this one back on the books once again. But just like that, one of the biggest, most impressive wins of the night, Ikram Alaskarov gets the first round knockout victory over Warley Alves as clean as it comes. What a fucking sequence, right? From rocking him with that jab to eventually landing that flying knee and the follow up punches that ended it all. That dude is impressive, man. That dude is impressive, and that was a great pickup for you in Dynasty. How did you feel about that first round destruction by Ikram?
Oh, I loved it because I am a firm. I believe Ikram's right there, man. I think people will start paying attention to him after this card, and I think we did him a disservice by not paying the casuals had not paying attention to him until now, and the way he just went in there and took care of a veteran like Alves. So Ikram's scary, and nobody really knows that Ikram and Hamzat have had their fight before and how close that was. Nobody knows that. So I wish that people will start paying more attention to Ikram because I think you could see a Ikram Hamzat 2 within a year, less than a year from now, if everything works out for both of these guys.
Whew. Yeah, that's a banger that we need to see. To be honest, at this point, we need to get that arc figured out. But hopefully, this time it's for a UFC title. Feels like both of those guys are headed in that direction. Obviously, we assume Warley Alves is probably either out of the UFC or definitely out of the middleweight division moving forward. But a big step up win for Ikram for sure, and sort of what we expected, right? But sometimes it ain't easy to go out there and do what's expected of you. But cousin said did exactly just that in the fight before this one. Gets the knockout. I mean, excuse me, the guillotine victory, power guillotine or a ninja choke or whatever the fuck you want to call it. Great call by you once again. I thought this was a beautiful choke, and kind of sucks that I didn't see this as an outcome because this is his jam, right? This is what he does. Great win by Saeed, and wish we got a little bit more of a fight, but you can't complain with a finish that beautiful.
Yeah, I loved it. This is why I chose Saeed. I just felt that he wanted to rebound from how everything went down in his last fight, and I think he had a lot more on. I don't know what it's like. A lot more to play. Like I think he had, something to lose here, and I just felt that he wanted to really make a statement, especially. And I said that in the preview show that I think he's going to come out here and try to get a first round sub. I think he's really trying to prove that he can and is, part of that Nurmagomedov name. That name has so much, high standard. Like, you can look at everyone from Bellator to here to anywhere that they really prove who they are, and I was not surprised by this win, and I'm really happy for him and the performance of the night.
100% can't be mad at a win like that. Right before that, though, awesome comeback victory with an arm triangle choke. Mohamed Mokayev gets the win over Tim Elliott. You brought it to my attention that this fight was in Tim Elliott's hands if it was going to the judges. He already was up 2 rounds going into that third round on all the judges' scorecards, which I thought to be a little bit surprising if you ask me. But gets the job done when he needs to and comes away looking like once again the prospect we expect him to be. How do you feel about Muhammad Mukayev's future at flyweight?
Damn, man, you just stole it. I was about to ask you. That's so funny because like I think his future's still pretty bright. I'm nervous for him though. With even with the can't even remember the guy who fought last, but the fact that it got as scary as it did, and then this Tim Elliott fight, I think he was a pretty heavy favorite going in, and I thought it was closer. I thought it was 1-1 going into round three, but the fact that two out of three judges had it 2-0 for Tim, and then obviously Mikhaev ends up getting the sub. Like he kind of bailed himself out with 2 minutes, less than 2 minutes left in the fight. So it was close, and I'm glad Mikhaev won because I think Mikhaev has so much stock in him, and I think he is the future of 125. But it is a little. I'm a little scared for him. I think I said this in the preview show as well that I like this guy. It's just there's something about him that gets me very nervous with him, and this fight did not help that. I Tim Elliott is a decorated veteran. He's been around a long minute, but I expected Mikhaev to come in to be the better fighter here and to get that sub and maybe get it earlier. I know I'm picking at straws here, but you know, to if that fight goes to decision, Tim Elliott gets his hand raised, and now we're talking about a completely different. Oh, is Mokayev even a good 125er? Was it all hype? Was it So he bailed himself out on this one, and it only gets harder from here. So I don't know whether he needs more time. I don't know whether rushing him into another fight will help him. That's why I kind of wanted to ask you, like, what would you do if you were Mokayev's team here? You see how these last two fights went down. Obviously, you do get the win. You've had three straight, submissions, four out of the last five. You are getting the victories, but the last two especially have been a lot closer than you wanted them to be. So, what would you do?
I mean, I think he really wants to make the push, right, to try to break the record. I don't know how realistic that is at this point in his career. I think he already kind of got set back big time with that injury to his knee. So at this point, if I'm his team, I kind of just say, let's fucking work our way through here, right? Let's figure this out a little bit more. Take the slow build approach. Um, I think he looks really good. Like I think even against those guys in the top five, I think he's going to be able to implement his skill and his will on those fights. Like I think those aren't easy fights, but at the same time, in those matchups, particularly in the top five, it starts to feel like his advantages get outweighed by some of the disadvantages of his style, which is really dependent on getting into good positions on the ground and specifically staying out of exchanges on the feet. Like I feel like the higher you go in these divisions, they're able to hold their own on the ground while also being able to punish you on the feet. And once that dynamic comes to play, I'm gonna be really interested, man, to see how he responds in those fights. Because even for stretches against Tim Elliott, he was getting jabbed and pieced up from range and kept on the outside. And obviously in the tie-ups, man, a lot of the times it isn't so quickly dominant on his side, right? Like a lot of the times we'll see, for example, top control from guys like Magomed Ankalaev. It's immediately in their favor, right? Sometimes these are real uh, scrappy moments, right? With a lot of these flyweights, and it's hard to stay out of scrambles in this division, period. But I think for his game, the more time getting comfortable on the feet and finding his sort of preferred path to getting something else done besides just the grappling. Once he gets a sort of firm grasp on who he is in that department, I think he's going to be super dangerous because there's going to be an actual threat there. But until then, it kind of does feel like, um, for the most part, if you could get him tired, if you could get him in scrambles and working, come the fourth and fifth round, you should be able to land on him in a way that could really change the trajectory of the fight. So there's a lot of questions to be answered, but I think it's always like that with these prospects. Really excited to see what comes for him because when he's on, man, he's fucking on, and he looks scary as hell to go up against. So I don't think it's gonna be easy for him to get fights moving forward, man. I think the word is out, and he's that kind of prospect. So keep your eye on Muhammad Makayev, no doubt. Um, but right before then, Trevor Peak gets the unanimous decision victory over one Mohamed Yahya, a fight that I thought was, although it had moments of action and moments of bursts, I thought this fight kind of was a little bit of a lull in the middle of this fight card. Um, Obviously, the random technique moments in this fight make me smile because I love seeing Trevor Peek do some wild shit out there. But just kind of felt like Muhammad Yahya never really found his way into this fight, and Trevor Peek just out veteraned him. Right? How'd you feel about this matchup?
I was pissed because you know, being called the UAE warrior, I expected him to be a warrior there, but I felt like it was, like you said, very low. It was very it's one of those fights, unfortunately, where if you look at a 13 fight card, this is one of those fights you don't remember because it's one of those where you obviously like I remember I'm saying, but to everyone else, it's kind of one of those like, all right, it's nothing blew me away. There wasn't, oh man, with the 2 minutes left in the third round, man, oh my god, you should have seen that combination. Like there was nothing like that in this fight, and I think Peak was just dominant from first, second, and third round. Like he was better. Nothing over the top crazy, but like I always say, veterans, being a veteran in this game and having fights in the octagon will always be an advantage. And that's what proved. They both weren't great, but Peak, being the veteran that he is, was better.
Great shouts. Yep, couldn't have said it better. Next up, right before, well, you know what I mean at this point. Um, the ball bags, baby. You better protect them when you go out there because Javid Basharat is coming for your nuts and he does not care if afterwards you are writhing in pain because he's going to the commission, baby. And he is going to appeal that no contest because he believes it was a legal shot. Sean, I love me some Javid Basharat. I think he's fucking crazy. I think the level of disrespect to just call this man a liar times 50 and then take it to that level where you're saying, I'm going to take it to the commission and try to fight this because I've been subject to an injustice. When you kick the man clear in his taint is just fucking ridiculous and tone deaf. And honestly, I love to see it, man. Somebody needs to do something about these fouls. And if Bashid Ignorance by Javid Basharat is what does it, hell, get the microscope under this officiating kerfuffle. Because I swear to God, this issues of fouling in MMA have existed for years. And it's about time we did something about it. I am not optimistic though, Sean. Are you?
No, I'm not optimistic about it at all. I Another one where with the whole doctor stoppage thingy, where the doctor coming in saying it didn't hit you there, and you clearly see the fighters like almost in the
Hey,
verge of tears.
stop fucking lying to
Yeah,
us. Stop lying to us, Victor.
yeah, like,
What an
oh
asshole.
my god. So I don't know what happened with the MRI. I really don't want to know, to be honest with you, but it's he was clearly in pain. He went back there. They said he was throwing up. He had to go right to the hospital. So it wasn't one of those debatable situations where you think, oh yeah, he's definitely faking it. He doesn't want to fight Basharat. Blah 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 blah. All those stupid narratives that are formed. It's unfortunate because, like I said, earlier, this card had a lot of dirty play going on there. It was a rough one, but the thing that bothered me the most with all this, dirty maneuvers, dirty play throughout, hey yo, I know it doesn't sound good, but
Mhm. Thank you.
but with all this nonsense happening throughout the card, I don't even know if there was a single time that a point was, taken away or anything throughout the entire night, and it was rough the whole night. I felt like almost every fight had something. So,
Mhm.
but this one, I don't know what Basharat's thinking right now. So I'm not even going to get into that. But you know, it doesn't really affect Basharat that heavily. Um, they're never gonna make this fight again. It's not like they're gonna go, man. We gotta do this fight over to see who the real winner is. They're just gonna move on with Basharat getting someone else, as if
Yeah,
he
most
did
likely.
win. So this is something like, yeah, you don't get a win, and you have that little one next to your record, but it doesn't affect you in any sort of capacity. Let's just move on and get you on a fight real soon.
Yep, that sounds about right to me. That's usually how the UFC responds to these no contest scenarios. But Cedric Dumas was able to overcome having his hair pulled as if this was an episode of World Star's Finest street fight videos. Sean, Abu Azaitar should never be in the UFC again, right? Not just because he's a dirty fighter, but because he's not too good. Is this a hot take? Am I
No,
overstepping
it's
here?
not. That's exactly why I didn't pick 'em. But, I just, I wasn't a big fan of Abu, as big as he is. Um, I think his time has come and went. I wasn't really even overly impressed with Cedric, or I don't care what it is. It's Cedric, it's Cedric Dumas. I don't care. It's French, but I
Yeah.
don't know how they pronounce it. There's everyone pronounces it differently. But I felt that Cedric was better fighter, and clearly, the winner in this fight. I just wasn't impressed with either of their performances, but I definitely wasn't thinking to myself like, "Oh man, Abu, hey man, that was still a good fight by Abu, man. Oh man, I hope he gets another shot." I was good. I know it was 2-1, 29-28, but I'm clear. I'm clear on Abu here.
Yes, sir. And I think we're good on also saying not very confident in Dumas's future in the UFC either. But
Yeah.
right before then, we had Anshul Jubilee just absolutely shit the bed against
Bro.
the dog with staff, Mike Breeden. God damn, this really obviously hurt both of our pockets a little here, but
More mine.
no, I disagree. My dynasty team felt it.
Just wait.
So I
You don't
disagree.
even know yet.
What?
You don't
What?
even know.
What?
So
Can you
I didn't
explain?
realize this in until later on, but I had put a nice little parlay on a bunch of fights here, and I had all of them right until Jubilee. A 6-fight parlay, which would have paid my rent if Jubilee would have
Oof.
just held on. And I'm so glad I didn't know that at the moment.
Mm,
Because now I'm at the point where I know I lose every bet, that I just don't even want to know what I bet and how I remember. I'm not checking. I don't even care to look because I'll just get upset. So
mhm.
watching that, and then I looked back the other day and saw that that was the fight that made me lose my next month's rent. Oh, and I was saying it too. Like I get it. Mike Breeden missed weight, and that definitely can play a factor there. But man, I don't know what the hell happened. I don't know if Breeden barking at him like a dog scared Jubilee half to death because he looked like the better fighter the first 2 rounds. And then all of a sudden he was getting yelled at and barked at, and like it felt like Jubilee like lost his soul. Like he didn't know who he was anymore. He was like scared of the guy, and like he stopped throwing punches. He was just running away. It really felt like there was like a rabid dog in there, and Jubilee was like didn't know what to do until it was inevitable that he got knocked out. I've never seen something like that where it just looked like someone's yelling antics really scared the shit out of someone. And I felt that that happened to Jubilee, and I was really hoping for Jubilee to win this one. The fact that India doesn't have that many, UFC fighters, I think he is he the only one at the current moment.
Yes, at
So
the current
yeah,
moment.
so like it's tough to see because Jubilee has a lot of hype around him, and man, that sucked. And especially now knowing the money I lost, love that for me. Um, I was hoping, for Jubilee to pull it out. He had it in the bag, and god damn did he fumble it. So that sucks. But overall, great yelling performance by Breeden, and I'm glad he scared the shit out of someone, literally, probably. And good for him. And like I said when we watched it together, I was like, I don't think Jubilee has that dog in him. And I know I keep making a bunch of dog references, but god damn man, that was rough. So you take over.
Dude,
I made another
in a
reference
fight,
there.
yeah, yeah, literally, literally. I
Rough,
can't keep
rough.
up with this man at all. I can't keep up. Nah, man, I couldn't
Yes.
agree anymore. That fight fucking stupid because there's no argument in my opinion who's the better fighter or who's the more skilled fighter. I'm picking Jubilee day any fucking day. It just felt like I don't even think it was a cardio thing. I really feel like he just felt resistance and just fucking fell apart, right? Which is not surprising for any prospect in the UFC specifically, but Just a terrible way to go out in a fight where you were clearly dominating and all you had to do was hold on, baby. Just hold on. We're going home, and you find a way to fucking get knocked out, man. You hate to see it, but I'm sure he will be back. And unfortunately, now Mike Breeden will as well. But with all that being said, we move on to the most fucking bullshit, the least satisfied result I felt from this entire card. Nathaniel Wood comes up short against Muhammad Naimov, someone that must have found a way to cheat the most, like, aggregate number of fouls in one fight has to go to Muhammad Naimov. This guy is a dirtbag from kicking the balls multiple times and never getting a point taken for it, to grabbing the fence, to grabbing the glove in the finishing sequence where we honestly felt that Daniel Wood was poised to knock him out in the third round. And all he did was hold on to that glove. Um, how the fuck I literally feel like that Yugi meme, right, from Yu-Gi-Oh! He's like, he can't keep getting away with this. That's how I feel about fouls in MMA at this point. It's so blatant, it's so egregious, and yet none of these guys get penalized at all. And if there was 1 point taken, in my opinion, the rightful winner of this fight would have came out on top. With all the things that Nathaniel Wood had to overcome in this one, I do not look at him as a loser, but just someone who's on the other side of unfortunate circumstances. Sean, am I being bleak here? Does Muhammad Naimov deserve more credit?
I think it was a good fight, but I think it was dirty as hell. And I think that's the reason when you fight dirty, you find ways to keep the advantage when you're losing it. And there was a lot of that, and it's hard. This is exactly what I brought up earlier before, where it's hard, where you see a lot of dirty fighting, and this is probably the number one culprit of it, and nothing happens. Like, I don't understand how in this fight, especially where we had three fouls within like a 8 minute span, not a single point was taken, and it's so clear. Especially during the fight, they're talking about it. After the fight, they're showing it. This is one of those fights where I almost like you feel like if you're Nathaniel Wood, you call the commission. You're like, "Hey, can we look at this fight again?" Like the grabbing of the fence here. The grabbing of the glove, the constant fouls to the groin, and all this other stuff. Listen, what chance? I'm already going at this 50-50. Why am I getting treated like this? Like, why am I
Mm,
not a single point? At least make it a draw. Take a point so that it's
yeah,
28-28 at the end of the night, and we can call this a draw. Maybe I'll rematch him on a fight night at Hellscape 5 million, and we'll square this away. But like, this is I was upset. I was upset watching this fight because you know I hate stuff like that. I hate when, obviously, when it happens once, it's like, all right, obviously it didn't wasn't meant to, be like that. But then all of a sudden it happens a second time. Then we're seeing the fence grab. Then we're seeing grabbing the glove. It's like, all right, enough. If I was a ref, I would have been like, you do this shit again. After the second, I
that's
would have been
such
like,
an
good job,
idle
1 point.
threat. Give me one. There's no
That's
fucking.
what I'm
That's
saying.
it.
After
Give
having
me-
the second time, I've been like, enough. Once I saw the glove grab, 1 point. Once I see the grabbing of the fence, 2 points. Like, obviously, it depends on how you look at it. It's the third fight of the night. That was probably as rough as it gets. But I'm surprised that just you know we went from the refs not doing enough to the doctors doing too much. It was like, okay, come on, meet us here, meet us in the middle here.
Yeah.
And this was fucked up. I feel for Nathaniel Wood. I hope the UFC doesn't penalize this man too much with the loss, and I hope he gets right back in there and has another tough fight ahead of him.
Great shout. I think it sucks that this performance is marred so bad by these fouls because Muhammad Naimov is a tank at 145 and has some real skills that just completely get thrown under the radar when you fight like that. But next up, Victoria Stafifikova gets the win over Jin Yu Fry. pussy juice just leaking everywhere out on that octagon, mixed with the staff. It must have smelled amazing in there in Abu Dhabi. How did you feel about this women's 115 matchup?
Well, um, I thought it went exactly as we predicted. Dudikova had gotten the job done, but finding out later, well, and this is the weird part too, announcing after the fight that you had staff. What? The, why would you do that? Why would you do it after the fact with the whole card still going on, 11, 12 fights to go? And you're out there, yeah, I got it. I have it right now. You just can't see it because it's under my shorts.
It's leaking
So,
in my asshole right now.
yeah, good luck to the rest of the guys. But, lucky for her, there were like two other fighters who also had it. So, it was, she kind of got saved by the bell there. Like it wasn't, too harmful for her. And, hopefully I don't know what happens with her, if she'll get fined or suspended. I don't know what the hell happens there. But, they asked Dana, like, the fact that 3 fighters still ended up having it, and he was like, "What can you do? There's
That's
really
a
nothing you can
bullshit
do."
non-answer, by the way.
And it
That's a
is. It
bullshit
is.
non-answer. Why are you getting a fucking medical before the fight hand? You would think that they do a physical to a certain extent. Every time I've gotten a physical, I've gotten my balls checked. Why the fuck we not figuring this out, right? Like
100%.
there, if you're really doing pre-fight medicals, in my opinion, commissions need to take. And obviously, the fucking UFC was the commission for this one. So if he doesn't give a fuck, nobody's gonna give a fuck on this end. But commission should really take it and take pride in preventing fights from happening, right? Because that's what your
Absolutely.
job is. Your job is to make sure that if someone isn't fit to fight for whatever reason, that they aren't. And clearly, they're just doing a fucking terrible job at doing that. Sorry, I cut you off, man.
No, it's just one of those things where you think, because it's Abu Dhabi, because there's a lot of money thrown into this, it almost makes you wonder the fact that there were 3 fighters other than Gilbert Burns. Gilbert Burns was so obvious, and the fact that he was posting all over social media, it was like, "Okay, we can't let this happen." The fact that he's telling people we have to save face here and say he's out. Like, before we even know how bad it is, take him out. The other 3 kind of hush hush, but I do feel in a way, if you're doing these, um doctor visits before the fight and plenty of them and all that stuff. I would be very surprised if it really goes unnoticed between all the doctors that come through with all 3 fighters. That's like, if that's the case, you got bad physicals, you got bad
Mhm.
doctors there. Something's not right.
Yep.
I don't know what's going on here, but that ain't right. And I think the fact that you had Paul Acosta out there just telling everyone, he was like, "Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. Okay, let's say we're cleaning it up. Let's replace him." And oh well, we didn't know. Oh, there's really nothing we can do. There was definitely something you could do, but you couldn't lose 3 prelim fights and go down to 10, and it would have messed everything up. So
Mhm.
I'm not saying that they're hiding something. I just think that it's very, very fishy that 3 fighters have it. The fact that they kept going, and the fact that Dana says, "There's really nothing we could do. It happened, and I didn't know about it till after." There's something you can do. You knew about it. There's doctors all day before and after. This is it's kind of bullshit. And the fact no one's talking about it just shows exactly what the UFC wanted. That it just it gets swept under the rug. We'll never talk about it again.
For sure. Couldn't have said it better myself. The final fight of the night, Shara Bullet Magomedov gets the win over Bruno Silva. I thought impressively, unlike the last fight, I thought this was a pretty clear win for him, despite some dicey judging, in my opinion, where Bruno Silva was not given the third round on every scorecard, even though I thought that was probably the clearest round for anyone in the entire fight. There's no respect given to grappling here, but I am not surprised. But Shara Bullet looked really exciting, right? And I think that might be all that matters. But do you think there is some truth to the conspiracy that the reason why we haven't seen him fight in the UFC up to this point is because we were waiting for a card that's sanctioned by the UFC? Is there something to that theory, Sean? Is the reason why we haven't seen him until we are out there in the desert?
Yeah, probably. I didn't even think about that. You're kind of this is brand new news to me. But yeah, I would. That's probably a good reason for why it took this long. Um, it might still continue to be that way. I don't know. I that's a very tough, little debatable thing to talk about. Yeah, probably, but I wonder what happens now. Like what can happen for him now, and what they're gonna do with him. Because now he's gonna be compared to Bisping for forever because of obviously having one eye. And I told you, he looks like the Greek god to me. Like I don't know why, because of the long beard and the curly hair. Like I don't know what it is. It just reminds me of some Greek god type figure that you
Yeah,
need to
every time
sculpt.
you explain it to me, it makes less sense, but I love it. It
Dude, it
just
just looks like a sculpture that you see, like,
ancient
of a
Rome
Greek god
vibe.
out there. Yeah, ancient Greece, ancient Rome. You're looking at that sculpture, you go, "Damn, I can see why that dude was a god." He looks like that, especially
Hmm.
dude looks like he had battle scars. Like he's blind, one eye's blind. He looks like he's been through it. Like he was just
Hmm.
in battle. Like so he helps himself in that regard. So
For sure.
regardless, I think it was kind of bullshit that Bruno didn't win that third round.
Hmm.
That was the most clear round of them all, like you said. And the fact that I remember obviously you had just arrived, the fight had just started at 10 a.m. I get it. Uh, I still think though, first card of the night, no reason why Bruno Silva should have lost, and get swept like that. I think he clearly won that third round, but still, great win for Shara. And if I remember correctly, I think he is 11 or 12-0 now. So there's some hype there. There's some hype there, and I'm glad that he got the dub. And we'll see what happens next.
Heck yeah. Well, with all that being said, our recap on the night, both Sean and I finished the night 7 wins, 4 losses, and 2 no contests, bringing our total for the season at 91 wins, 53 losses, 1 draw, and 3 no contests. Me and Sean are all knotted up in the head to head competition, but Dynasty is rounded out with both of us going 2-1 and 1 no contest. But I finished the night 3 points ahead, as I have been 31 and 16, 1 draw, 1 no contest, to your 28, 19, and 1 no contest. Next week, there's one fighter that's already been drafted. Montserrat Conejo is going to be making a stamp, repping the flag of
Not too
Sean
happy about it.
Negron's MMA once
That's
again.
right.
But until then, we've got another card to look forward to. Jalton Almeida versus Derek Lewis, which is the late minute replacement. But we'll get into that next week. Until next time, folks, we can't wait and we'll be thinking about all of you. But before we dip out of here, just make sure you're following the brand at OTS Media and OTS Media Co. on YouTube. And you follow my guy, Sean Negron. Why don't you tell them where they could do that, brother?
Again, you can follow me at Shonegron26 on Twitter. And then if you're feeling up to it, you can go to bsreports.org where you can see me and eventually Chris's, and we can get to show you what we're all about, not only in the podcast game, but in the writing game and obviously everything else in sports in general.
Couldn't have said it more beautifully myself. We all have got a lot of things to look forward to. You could catch me at Negron MMA on Twitter and TikTok, as well as Chris Negron underscore on Instagram. But until next time, folks, make sure you keep that taint protected, baby, because we don't give a fuck about groin shots or enforcing the penalties on this side. Catch you next time. Peace.